On a warm late morning Saturday, sunlight slipped through the lace curtains of a quiet little cafe on Willow Street, casting soft gold across empty tables and the gentle sway of fresh flowers placed at every corner. It should have been an ordinary day, but for Rowan Mercer, a single father still learning how to balance hope with exhaustion, it was the day he unknowingly walked into a cruel setup. His so-called friends, bored and hungry for entertainment, had arranged a blind date for him, not out of kindness, but out of mockery. They whispered jokes, nudged each other, and waited to see how he'd react when he discovered that the woman they had chosen didn't match the polished, shallow standards they themselves lived by. They thought it would be funny. They thought he would walk out. They had no idea how wrong they were. Before the story unfolds, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and treating people with dignity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps spread stories that matter. Rowan sat quietly at the sunlit table, tapping his fingers lightly against a mug of untouched coffee. Life hadn't given him much time for dating after his wife passed away 2 years earlier. Between juggling 2 part-time jobs and raising his curious 8-year-old daughter, Marcy, every moment felt like a fragile balancing act. His friends told him he needed to get back out there, to stop living in grief, but Rowan never liked the idea of forced romance, especially blind dates. But after days of relentless persuasion, he finally gave in, not knowing their intentions were far from sincere. The cafe buzzed with midday chatter, clinking dishes, and fragrance of warm bread. He tried to calm his nerves, rehearsing polite greetings in his head. He told himself this was just a simple lunch, an hour out of his busy life, nothing more. When the door chimed, Rowan looked up, and his breath caught slightly. Walking in was a woman named Corinne Ashford, someone he had never met but immediately sensed carried worlds inside her. She wore a pastel dress that brushed her knees, her soft figure outlined gently beneath it. Her bright, nervous smile trembled as though she had prepared herself for disappointment yet again. Corinne was overweight, something society never failed to remind her of, and she carried it with a quiet ache she tried her best to hide. She hesitated at the entrance, scanning the room for a familiar face, until the hostess pointed her toward Rowan's table. The men at the back, Rowan's so-called friends, nudged each other with stifled laughter, clearly waiting for the moment he would betray the disgust they expected. But Rowan didn't flinch. When Corinne walked toward him, he stood, really stood, without hesitation, offering her the most sincere smile he had worn in years. She blinked, unsure, surprised by his warmth. They sat across from each other, sunlight glazing the space between them, and Rowan noticed the way her hands shook slightly as she settled into her chair. He saw the way her eyes flicked around nervously, expecting rejection. He recognized that feeling, because he had lived it too. The weight of being judged without being known. The weight of being dismissed without being understood. For the first few minutes, their conversation was tender but cautious. Corinne spoke softly about her work at a local library, her passion for restoring old books, and her love for painting landscapes during her afternoons off. Rowan listened intently, genuinely captivated by the gentle strength she carried. He told her about Marcy, about the struggles of raising a daughter alone, about how he missed adult conversations that weren't about homework, grocery lists, or unpaid bills. As they spoke, something shifted, 2 wounded hearts quietly recognizing each other's loneliness. Behind them, the men continued to watch, whispering cruel remarks, expecting Rowan to walk away at any moment. But instead, Rowan found himself wanting the conversation to continue. Corinne gradually relaxed, her laughter emerging like sunlight breaking through clouds. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny. And Rowan realized with every passing minute that the cruel joke wasn't on her, it was on him. His friends had underestimated him, and in doing so, revealed more about themselves than anyone else. Moments later, when Corinne excused herself to the restroom, Rowan's friends approached his table, wearing smirks wide enough to reveal their intentions. They teased him, nudged him, asking if he was done with the comedy show. For the first time in a long time, Rowan felt anger rise, not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that comes from deep disappointment. When Corinne returned, she sensed something was wrong. Her face fell, familiar pain flickering in her eyes. "It's okay," she whispered before even sitting down. "You don't have to pretend. People usually don't." Her voice trembled as she reached for her purse. But Rowan couldn't let her walk away like that, not from him, and not because of them. In that moment, he stood again, turning toward his friends with a steady voice that silenced the cafe around them. He told them that Corinne was the kindest, most genuine person he had spoken to in years, someone who carried herself with more grace and dignity than people who judged others based on shallow appearances ever would. He told them that being a single father had taught him to see hearts, not bodies, that Marcy would grow up learning that kindness mattered more than perfection. And then he turned to Corinne and gently said that she deserved someone who appreciated her, not someone who treated her like part of a joke. Tears welled in her eyes, not from hurt this time, but from the rare experience of being defended, being seen. A hush fell over the cafe. Even strangers watched, touched by the sincerity of his words. His friends, embarrassed and speechless, quietly slipped away. Rowan sat again, and Corinne slowly took her seat too, still trembling, still overwhelmed, but no longer alone. For the rest of the afternoon, they talked beneath the warm glow of midday sunlight, and when they finally walked out together, Rowan felt lighter than he had in years. Not because he had found romance, but because he had found a connection rooted in honesty and shared vulnerability. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that inspire compassion. Before the ending, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Rowan's place? As they walked into the bright afternoon, Corinne wiping soft tears from her eyes and Rowan smiling gently beside her, the world felt a little kinder than it had that morning. And sometimes, that small shift, one moment of courage, one moment of seeing another person fully, is enough to change more than just a day. It can change lives.